And let's pick up with VJ Day, because the King, the Queen and the Prime Minister have attended a service of remembrance to mark the 80th anniversary of VJ Day, Japan's surrender at the end of the Second World War. Veterans gathered at the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire, where they witnessed a flypast from the Red Arrows. Well, let's go there now and join my colleague Kasia Madeira for more. And Kasia, an increasingly poignant commemoration, I think, as the number of veterans dwindles.
Anita, it really is. 33 veterans being with us here today during an incredibly poignant service of remembrance. And just a few minutes ago, His Majesty the King walked past us. Here we're in the Far East section of the National Memorial Arboretum, where the respects are being paid to all of those who gave up so much. The King himself giving an address earlier on today, saying that he thanked the veterans and the prisoners of war who are still alive for their service, and he thanked them for everything that they did, because this is one of the last moments, last times on this anniversary, the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War, that these veterans will indeed gather together. So an incredibly poignant day, but my goodness, when you speak to those veterans, they have so much that they want to share with you, and they're so nonplussed about the experiences that they had. Just earlier on today, I was able to speak to Sid Machin. He's 101 years old. He was part of the Chindits. They were the elite fighting force that went in behind the enemy lines in Burma, now of course Myanmar. And he is just so joyous to speak to. Here's what he said to me a few moments ago.
So how old?
How old? I'm 101.
101 years young.
Yeah.
You're looking fabulous for it. How do you feel today?
Yeah, not too bad, yeah. I mean, I'm pretty well fit in myself, but my knees are packing up on me. I can't walk far.
I'm sure they're fine. Tell us what you experienced in those conditions in the jungles.
Well, I suppose you can say that it was hard work and monotonous, really. I mean, all you were doing was marching. You didn't know what you were doing half the time, to be honest. I mean, you were behind the lines and you never got much information as to what was going on. But it was hard, but it was just one of those things.
Do you remember the heat? How hot was it? What were the conditions like?
It was very hot, yeah. I mean, all the time. I mean, we used to use these hats, and if we went near a stream, we'd dip the hat in and pour it over us to cool down. But,
King Charles has thanked you for your service and your sacrifice. What do you say?
yes, very kind of him, yeah. I've met him a couple of times, yes. I believe he's coming here, isn't he, today, yeah. So, yes, he's quite pleasant to talk to. So, all well and good.
Sid Machin there, 101 years old, and he will be having a private reception now with His Majesty the King and, of course, Queen Camilla as well. The Prime Minister was here as well, but at the heart of all of this are, of course, the veterans, because they have been regarded as that forgotten army, because, of course, only 3 months ago, victory in Europe was being celebrated, but what happened in the Far East and Southeast Asia, the fighting still continued in very brutal conditions. And someone who can testify to that is my next guest, Lieutenant Colonel David Kemmis-Betty of the British Army, joining us here on BBC News. I know your father, two of your uncles, fought in that theatre of war when it came to the Second World War. You've written extensively about it. You've been researching their lives. It was such a difficult and a challenging theatre of war, given that these men were thrown into jungles, battling not just the enemy, the Imperial Army of Japan, but also the diseases, malaria, cholera. It was such a difficult time.
Indeed. Yeah, absolutely. My two uncles were with the 14th Army in Burma, going from, in effect, defeat into victory with General Slim. And one of them was a mountain gunner, Mervyn Kemmis-Betty, and the other one, a 5th Gurkha Frontier Force Regiment, who actually was promoted from major to major general throughout the whole campaign, ending the campaign as a major general commanding a division under Slim, and earning 3 DSOs. But my father was in the Malayan campaign, and he fought a number of delay battles down the Malayan Peninsula, from the Thai border all the way down Malaya to Singapore. And then after the fall of Singapore, he was then a prisoner of war for 3.5 years in Changi jail in Singapore. The experience of Changi is perhaps one of the lesser known bits of that Far Eastern campaign, with Gurkhas and Indian troops, both Hindus, Muslims and Sikhs, all involved. He was a Gurkha there with the rest of his battalion, those that had survived the fighting. And he interestingly wrote a diary, which was quite dangerous for himself to do that. And we've recently sort of recovered that diary and published it as a book called Half a Banana. And my brother sort of put together the context around it, brother Richard. And it tells a really fascinating tale, I think, of a slightly different story. He was very lucky not to go up to the railways in Burma, and a lot of those people obviously had a horrific time and didn't survive. But they had a relatively easier time in Changi, and he was really lucky to be able to keep fit and mentally strong by with an old childhood friend of his. They set up a whole series of gardens with other fellow prisoners working for them, and they were able to help feed the 17,000 prisoners of war that were there, to supplement the rations and that sort of thing. And they also were extraordinary at sort of keeping themselves really busy and engaged. They would play sport and put on plays and play music and sing in choirs and concerts and learn instruments and play records. And they would read a lot, and they would give talks to each other. He learned a couple of languages in Changi. He would endlessly be playing cards. Going to church was really, really important for him, and that sort of thing. And then also keeping the morale up. I think he got letters from home eventually. Some of them took about a year to arrive, and his postcards home saying sort of proof of life also took over a year to get there. But I think what comes out of it was an amazing friendship and discipline and sort of hope amongst those that were there. And funnily enough, he was not bitter towards the Japanese. He just saw them as fellow professional soldiers. And was quite sort of unbitter about the Japanese, as many obviously were.
That's a really gracious thing to say. It's a really interesting point as well, because ultimately Uncle Bill, as the troops would know, the commander of the 14th Army, he would say that, look, you are the forgotten army. It's something that from the diaries, is that something that was felt, you think? Because ultimately that's why we're here today, to remember these veterans who gave up so much, these prisoners of war who sacrificed so much and endured so much. And yet we reflect upon VE Day most recently 3 months ago. VJ Day, not so much. Is that something that your father potentially found?
I think potentially there was a bit of that. I think it's really wonderful that the King and the Queen have gone to the National Memorial Arboretum for the service today. Perhaps there's not quite as much razzmatazz as VE Day, but it's really important that we do keep remembering those very few that are still alive today, but those that have gone before and given their sort of sacrifice and had a really tough time, some of them, and we remember them. And I think a lot of people have probably got family links, not just in Britain, but in Commonwealth countries, in India and Pakistan, and of course in Nepal with the Gurkhas, who had enormous numbers of troops, fighting with the Indian Army, British Indian Army, fighting in Burma and Malaya, and were incarcerated in prison. So it's really important that we do remember that courage and sacrifice into the future.
Lieutenant Colonel David Kemmis-Betty of the British Army, thank you so much for sharing the memories from your family, the experience that your father, your uncles had. Thank you. And that's what today ultimately is all about, to remember those who, as King Charles himself had said, had sacrificed so much. He thanked them for their service, and now he's going to have a reception with those 33 veterans who are here with us today from the ages of 96 to 106. They'll be joining the King and Queen Camilla, and they'll be paying their respects to all of those so that their memories are not forgotten. We have extensive coverage here on BBC News from the National Memorial Arboretum.